when we're raising our kids, we want them to do well, of course, in the world. We want to make sure that we've done everything we can to prepare them for it. We want them to get good grades. We want them to do well on tests. We want them to go to the best schools and universities. But what about preparing them creatively? Because now more than ever, having creative skills is an incredibly important part of being successful and surviving in this ever-changing world. So what we want to know is, how do you raise a creative kid? How do you make sure that they have the right kind of stimulation? What kind of role should you play in what they're doing? What kinds of ways can you help them? What kind of resources should you provide for them? Today we're going to ask these kinds of questions to somebody who I think is pretty much of an expert. His name is Rick Beerhorst, and he and his wife Brenda are artists in Michigan in the United States. And together they have raised 6 children, and they've homeschooled them as well. And these kids are all creative and successful, wonderful people. So let's find out, how do they do it? The question I have for you today is, you have an incredible family, an incredibly creative family, and you raise them in an incredibly creative way. You make your own rules about it. Tell me a little bit about how you see it. How you see it after you've raised all these kids, you've homeschooled them, they're artists, you've dragged them around to different places. They've had a really unusual life, and they seem to all be terrific kids. So tell me a bit about, what is your philosophy? How do you raise a creative family?
Yeah, that is such a good question. I think it's really important for mom and dad to be healthy and to be creative, because really it all kind of flows out of what Brenda and my relationship is doing or not doing. And also that we're involved in creative things. I mean, Brenda's gotten very involved in different things over the year. Her latest thing of the last couple of years is belly dance. And, I would have never guessed that would be something she'd want to get involved in. But, as she does that, and as she sets up the dance studio up in the attic and struggles with what happens when you try to do something you don't know how to do, and all the awkwardness of that the children are witness to that. And the girls have at different times gone with her. They see mom really, risking. And that translates to them and enables them to, take their own, version of that with them. So
that's interesting. I mean, for me, it's like I have, my son is in art school. He's studying painting.
Yeah.
And there's certainly times where I think, why did I just hand him a loaded gun? Why didn't I just insist that he go to law school or something like that? But, I know that it's the right thing, but it is still, a big responsibility. Obviously, you want to do all you can for your kids to make sure they have a successful life. How do you resolve that in your mind in terms of, obviously each of your kids is an individual and they're going to follow whatever path they take, but how do you cope with that issue?
Well, the potential insecurity of like pursuing the arts, frankly, it's not something I worry about. I don't really think about too much. There are different things I worry about with the kids in terms of, finding good comrades and, possible bad influences, smoking and those sorts of things. But in terms of a life in the arts, our life has been, frankly, it's almost like we took, a Franciscan vow of poverty, which is slowly we're sort of being released from in the past 5 years. But frankly, being poor has been really awesome for us. It's been so good in so many ways, and it's taught us so many really valuable lessons that we've kind of found the secret of almost, it's like we're content when we're so broke that we're making our own dish soap, and pulling things out of dumpsters, to when we're really flush and we feel like we can go to the grocery store and get anything we want. They both have their own kind of problems in a sense, and they also have their own treasures. So, knowing that our kids are going to experience that on their own at some point is fine, because that's how they've grown up. And I really feel like, if anything, we've equipped them with some of the just life experiences of what that's like on a very personal way, that they've had that experience. They've grown up with that.
I think that's a really great gift that you've given them, this resilience in the face of whatever challenges life gives you, because you can survive, you can thrive, and it's not just about the car you have in your garage. Definitely, that's a great
Right.
lesson to them. Let me ask you something else. What is it about? What is it like? I mean, I see this with my son. I love it when he comes home and we draw together, we talk about art, and it
Yeah.
inspires me back. So I feel
Yeah.
like I created this person who's there to help to create me in a way. What is it like
Right.
for you? You're surrounded by all these creative people in your family. That must
Yeah.
be just a hive of activity and feeding your soul too.
Yeah, it can be. I mean, I don't want to paint it too idealistically so people have a false notion. I mean, it's also really difficult because you think of a family of artists and how selfish artists can be. I mean, another book I'm halfway through right now is the biography came out of Lucian Freud and how terrifically selfish he was. And he was the first to admit it and what a terrible father he was. And it's almost frightening to to read the book and see some of those things in myself. And yeah, we homeschooled the kids. What did that really look like? A lot of times it was like Brenda kind of working on her project, me working on my project, and the kids kind of left to go feral. And sometimes that worked out great. Sometimes it was a train wreck. And so and just those artistic personalities kind of clashing with each other, that happens sometimes on a daily basis. So it can be excruciatingly difficult. We've had times where we've had to really soul search, like, is this working? And different times where we've brought in professionals to help us kind of troubleshoot through areas, and whether that's in-home counseling or strategists like Brainerd Carey we've brought in to help us. If we need help, we'll go and find it. But you know, in terms of the kids as they get a little older and you start to relate to them more as adults, that's been fantastic. Especially with Rose and Pearl. Rose is 22, Pearl's is 20, both living out on their own. We just did a family art show, and the things, not only the things that they're able to do with their work at this level of their kind of maturity, but also the people, the community that they bring to us, which is more their age group, has just been so enriching to us in so many ways. And it's just, yeah, and I just love it because it continues to evolve and grow.
And you guys work on projects together, right?
We do, absolutely. And that's been an important part of kind of the cohesion of our family, to have some of these projects we can pitch in together.
Like what can you tell me a bit about the wagon project, because that was just
Sure.
such a spectacular thing.
Yeah, this special contest in our town, we made we wanted to make a portable art gallery that we could take down into the city, kind of take our home into the city. We bought an Amish buggy, tore it down to the chassis, rebuilt what would sort of look like a gypsy wagon, filled it with art, covered it with scrap metal, pulled it with people, and it made a really powerful impact.
I mean, I think there are a lot of people who are, if they do have a creative spirit, they may feel like they need to hide it.
Yeah.
There are people who say, I don't want people in my family to see things that I post on Facebook. So can you keep that private? I think there's a lot of people but I say to them, you'd be surprised at how people might take to what you're doing. So don't, but it's a risk because you never know what's going to happen.
I think of two metaphors. One, unexposed film. People are like unexposed film. It's like, get that in the camera, start taking pictures, expose yourself in your art. Another thought I think of is tulip bulbs in the box. Take them out of the box and go outside and plant those babies. And you're not going to see anything, but in the spring, you're going to have these fantastic flowers. So, it is risky. It's personal. It makes yourself vulnerable. But in doing that, as you take that risk, it's going to bounce back to you. And this gift that you have, begin to share it. It isn't boasting. It's really a selfless thing to give and share what you have with others. And you have no idea how that's going to bounce back to you and how that's going to ricochet out into the world in really positive ways.
That's a fantastic closing thought. Thanks very much.
You bet. Thanks, Danny.